All right, I'd like to call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for April 9th, 2019. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Red Brown.
Yep.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Tyler Bird.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Carol Frazee.
Here.
Satpal Sadhu.
Would you all like to rise and join me in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a couple of announcements. Would you please turn off your cell phones, and if you'll be handing out any paperwork to council members, please give one copy to the clerk for our office files. And it's just the minutes reflect that Mr. Sadhu just joined us. First item up is 2 sets of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Brenner moves to approve. Mr. Dolman seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did you have your hand up? No. That passes unanimously. Next item up will be some public hearings, and in this case, audience members who wish to address the council during a public hearing are asked to sign up at the back of the room prior to the meeting. The council chair will ask those who have signed up to form a line at the podiums. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and optionally include city of residence. Speakers who will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of the time limits and inform speakers when they have 30 seconds left to conclude comments. When a larger group of individuals supports the same position on an issue, the selection of 1 or 2 representatives to speak on behalf of the entire group is encouraged. When using the microphone, please speak close enough that you can hear yourself on the speakers. This will ensure that everyone else can hear your comments as well. The first item up is an ordinance amending the Whatcom County Code Section 1.14, correcting certain precinct boundary lines and precinct maps. This is a second amendment, AB 2019-183. Do I have it as a staff report?
Hello. I don't often come to you, but twice in 2 months is pretty good. We're doing the cleanup of our precinct maps to be ready for filing week that's coming. So this is the last of the deadline of when changes can be made. And we noticed after the one that we had done before that there were 2 other precincts in Linden that were affected by some annexations. And there was 1 precinct in the city of Bellingham that was over the statutory limit of how many voters you can have per district. So we just needed to make a shift of 244 voters from the larger one to the one next door. So that's what's being proposed in this second amendment. I'd ask for your support.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Ms. Brenner?
Yeah. Does doing this in any way change anything for the people? I mean, it makes the map clean, but
Right.
does it have any effect specifically on
Just that if
individuals?
people are affected, like there are 244 voters that were too many in one precinct, they get shifted to another. So they'll get a new card telling them that these are the things that you get to vote on for the precinct that you're now in. But other than that,
Okay.
there's
what
no
I
other
thought.
changes.
Okay.
Mrs. Dolan?
So 201 and 202, those are existing. You're just kind of changing. One of them's not new. You just move the line to.
Well, neither one of them are new, but one was smaller than the other, so when the one gets too large. We were hoping to just wait and do that when the redistricting comes after the census, but when the state auditor was here, or not state auditor, the Secretary of State's office did our recent review, they pointed out that you can't wait for the redistricting to come. You need to do it now, so that's why we're back.
Further questions? I have one. Do we make an effort to ensure that if there's any change in the impact to the PCO for that district that they're informed?
I think the parties take care of doing that, but I'll inquire about that.
Sorry, Ms.
Oh, I'm sorry, Debbie Adelstein, County Auditor.
Thank you. Anything else from Ms. Adelstein? Seeing none, I'll open it up for public comment. I have 4 people signed up, Christian Wilson, Lance Callaway, Atul Dasmani, and I think it's
I'm not sure they're signed up, they want to speak to this.
Jocelyn Shapiro. They've signed in for this particular issue. Did you wish to speak to this issue or something else? Okay,
Open session.
open session, okay. Sorry, is there anybody else who wishes to speak in the open public session to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the open public session. What's the, any move approval?
Second.
Mr. Bird moves approval, Mr. Donovan seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Next item up is the open public session. During the open session, audience members can speak to the council on any issue not scheduled for public hearing. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and optionally include city of residence. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of time limits and inform speakers when they have 30 seconds left to conclude comments. With that, I don't have anybody signed in for the open public session, but I'll assume that this list was the ones that people were thinking of. So again, it's Kirsten Wilson, Lance Callaway, Atul Dasmani, and I think it's Jacqueline Chopra. And I just ask people to line up on either side, or either podium would be great. Thank you.
Yes, Lance Callaway, Bellingham, and with AGC of Washington. I'm speaking in regards to the proposed introduction of the ordinance in regards to apprenticeship requirements on public works jobs. Whatcom County has a phenomenal history of having a great homogeneous relationship between open shop and union contractors in our community. For years, many of the county projects have been provided and delivered on time, safe, and at budget by many of our open shop contractors. With the proposed ordinance that's looking to be put forward, this is going to create a change in that homogeneous relationship where it's going to create an unfair or unbalanced process in regards to the bid process by placing an undue constraint upon open shop merit contractors. These contractors have, for years, have invested in their employees to develop and provide great service to our communities. You know, AGC is a big proponent of apprenticeship, but it should not be a determinant in awarding of contracts. It should be based on the merit of each and individual contractor. The county has conveyed in this ordinance that this is also in regards to workforce development. Workforce development is key to our community, and I applaud that, but I think the efforts are a little off base in regards to, you know, what we really need are more young talent coming in to replace an aging workforce that is ever becoming more challenged with the jobs that are out there for these young people. Many young people are not looking at the construction trades as a first option. They're looking at, you know, as a second or fallback. We need to change that perception. And I do believe that, you know, this is not the method to do that. I'd like to also, you know, applaud the county for reaching out to talk with other members of the community that are in the construction trades about this. Open shop contractors, you know, have a great opportunity to continue to provide the county a quality, safe product while they're also bringing in new talent, training them, and training them to be a skilled workforce. I appreciate the time and the consideration the county has given to this situation.
Thank you. If I may, I'll make sure I cover the people who signed up first. So you're,
Jacqueline Sterna.
thank you, please.
I'm the Government Affairs Director of the Building Industry Association of Whatcom County. Generally, BIAWC supports apprenticeships. We support fair and open competition on project bidding as well as workforce development. It appears the intent of the LEAP program or of the LEAP ordinance is to indeed attract young people into the trades and cultivate a skilled force. Yet it inadvertently creates challenges to open shop contractors, many who are members of the BIAWC. LEAP will increase the cost of doing business on large jobs for our members. It will require extra administrative staff costs to track apprentices and report EAP utilization plans to the county. I noticed that failure to meet a utilization goal will result in various financial penalties to the contractor, which is an additional concern. And it is somewhat punitive, given that WSDOT adopts a good faith effort in the contracts that they have. Another expensive aspect of LEAP is that the cost involves decreased competition at the subcontractor level. This may happen due to companies choosing not to participate in county projects because of the stringent apprenticeship requirements. For example, if you go from getting 3 or 4 bids on each scope to 1 or 2 subcontractors bidding on each scope, that can make a big difference. If a BIWC member has to specifically call subcontractors and beg them to quote a project because everybody else has decided not to, they're going to charge a premium price to the general contractor. Furthermore, tracking the apprenticeship percentage across all labor types is cumbersome and expensive. One company will track up to 10 different labor types and probably up to 30 different subcontractors on a larger job, trying to make sure that everybody is hitting the 15% margin that's been assigned. Right now, the school projects is at about 15% on all labor combined, and tracking that is very challenging for her members. LEAP may also increase the likelihood of county projects going to contractors who reside outside of Whatcom County, not local businesses, because of the complexity that's required at the administrative level. Now, presently, it does seem that one challenge for both the open shop and the unions
30
alike
seconds, please.
is attracting new young talent into the trades. The county's LEAP ordinance does not solve the talent acquisition problem. Rather, it creates more challenges and mandates that impact the construction industry and our members negatively, and it is an imposition. We are working with our counterparts in Skagit County and at the statewide level to develop workplace development and attraction to youth. We're also looking at changing legislation next session so that, thank you.
Okay. Atul, I think you were next. And then I had Kristen Wilson. Yep.
This is a different topic. Council members, I just want to bring your attention to a drought. Of course, you're all aware of that. The impacts of the drought could be between modest to severe. Today at the PUD commission meeting this morning, of which I'm a commissioner, we discussed the county drought response plan. Councilmember Sidhu is present for a portion of that discussion. I look forward to working with the county council at an upcoming Natural Resources Subcommittee meeting, and look forward to helping us both deal with short-term actions as well as longer-range planning. In a way, our drought response plan for the county is a crude version of a water supply plan that we also need to develop. So that concludes my comments. Thank you. Atul Deshmane.
My name is Kristen Wilson, and I live in Bellingham. In March, I contacted you regarding the development and operation of a business on the R5 property adjacent to us. It's located at 576 East Laurel Road. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank each one of you for expediting the enforcement investigation on the business, and I'm especially grateful to Barbara Brenner for her assistance and to those of you who reached out to us personally. We really appreciate it. Building is currently taking place of a 9,700 plus square foot structure. with 7 bathrooms, which includes a 3,720 square foot gym. The purpose, one of the purposes of the rural district is to maintain a low-density rural residential character of the areas designated as rural. In this regard, I feel that the intent of this statement has failed us as property owners. I'd like to briefly relate our experience in the hope that you will consider it as you plan for future growth and development in the county. Would a structure this large have been built if not for the business operating in the same location? In my opinion, it would have been less likely. Moreover, given the exceptional size and character of the structure, why wasn't the structure in question physically inspected prior to approval? Enforcement of code noncompliance apparently relies on enforcement requests made by another property owner. This presupposes that each requesting property owner agree and places the property owner in the position of creating acrimony in spite of the option of an anonymity. The fact that there was a backlog of more than 300 cases was not encouraging to us. And even with the assurances that our request would be given a moderate priority, we could not be given any specific timeline concerning enforcement action. Code enforcement is a civil matter. Officers do not have the ability to inspect the inside of buildings or property without the consent of the property owner, making enforcement difficult.
30
Our
seconds,
only
please.
timely choice available to us was to retain an attorney and pursue legal action. This was not a feasible option for us. The question, if an enforcement action will take place against A1 Plumbing and Heating, will be based on proof of continuous business use of the building on the property from the time of rezoning to the present. According to our enforcement officer, it's a very complex issue.
Time.
In closing, I appreciate that there must be a balance between the rights of property owners to use and develop their property and the protection of the character of rural properties. I believe that our experience illustrates a need for improvement in the future. Sorry about the quality.
What's going on with the microphones?
I think Mr. Smith was next.
Evening, Council. My name is Trevor Smith. I live in Bellingham. I'm here to speak about the apprenticeship ordinance. We fully support the idea of apprenticeship utilization. As the BIAW and the AGC stated before us, I mean, they support the idea of apprenticeship. We're all about bringing in more people into the workforce and getting them trained properly and correctly. The ordinance that is being proposed is not overly burdensome. It doesn't make it so that contractors can't bid. We've seen this in the city of Seattle. We've seen it with WashDOT. We've seen it with city of Shoreline, repeatedly with other cities. It doesn't make it so projects can't be bid. It's not overdriving the cost of a project. Usually the engineers set the price of the project before it's even bid. So some of this just doesn't sound right. So from our point of view, we support this. We need to bring more people in. We need to get them trained. We need to get them trained properly, and apprenticeship is the best way to do that. College is not always an option for somebody, so using construction as a means to get somebody educated and get them trained in a field that they can work in until they retire. Apprenticeship is the original 4-year degree. This is how we do it, and it's. I just urge you guys to support it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brenner.
What if small businesses want to be able to have people come from apprenticeship programs? Where are these programs?
So there are multiple programs within the state, whether it's through the building.
No, I'm
trades.
talking locally.
Like, there's several statewide programs that they can use. There's open shop programs, AGC's got a program, there's CITC, there's,
Are there any that are right here in Whatcom County?
as far as like actual
Train somebody right
specific
here.
training schools.
Yeah.
So the community college has a pre-apprenticeship program
Okay.
through workforce development.
What about the VOTEC?
That's what I meant was a VOTEC.
Oh, okay, they
yeah.
do have them? Okay.
They have some of the skilled trades in there.
Okay.
Otherwise, our training schools are spread, for most of us, whether you're talking open shop or union, they're spread out throughout the state. So,
Would the pre-apprenticeship program count towards this?
yes, it usually does. It gets
Somebody's shaking their head no.
it gets them enrolled into.
Wait, it gets them enrolled, or it would count as part of the quota if a student was in the pre-apprenticeship program?
Would it count towards the apprenticeship? Not under the current state code, no.
Okay, so anyone in the program right now that they have, that wouldn't qualify for this?
So one of the things that we were hoping for in the language is that it would be anything that is registered with the state of Washington as an approved apprenticeship program. Whether it's open shop or union shop, there are programs there, they can put them in. So, and they can use their apprentices if they already have them in-house.
I just don't want to make a comment, I just want to make a comment to you, is that since the people who are commenting on this are here, what happens, this is in the end of our agenda, and they all leave. I would request that if we can discuss this further, because I have extensive comments on this on both sides of the issue. That was my request to you.
I would second that.
So the motion and a second to have the debate on this issue.
Can we do that if it's on for introduction?
I think what we'd have to do is finish the open public session and then immediately therefore move this as the, okay, is that your motion?
Yes, that's what
That's your second?
I said.
Okay, so further discussion, seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we'll do that. So we will continue this, finish the open public session first and then we'll start a dialogue on this particular issue.
Stick around.
I'm going to make a little right turn here. I'm Bob Gay, and I'm business representative for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 191 here. And I'm here to speak about Cherry Point Industries and, the family wage jobs they provide to our members and many others in the community. This evening, later on in your agenda, you're going to have a request authorizing the county executive to enter into your $40,000 contract with Cascadia Law Group again. And I was reading the memo, the March 12th memo from the county executive to the council, and his concerns really they echo the concerns of, a lot of us here in the community, especially building trades, as far as this whole process. It seems like it's gone on, it's been kind of dysfunctional. There's changes, you show up and find out a whole new set of language was introduced a month before that you knew nothing about, and it's disconcerting to us anyway. And so I would just urge you, the council, to take the county executive's concern to heart. There's in the memo it stated that the executive stated, he says, "I'm concerned with the council's commitment to a transparent review of these issues. The community expects and deserves that." And we just believe that what's going on here will have a big impact on, future projects out there for our members in Cherry Point, and that affects our abilities to feed our families. And we just feel that we deserve that transparency and consistency. So I just thank you on that. And I would just like to add on apprenticeship that true apprenticeships improve lives. I mean, there's like I said, they've stated there's a lot of things that get the tag of apprenticeship on them, and they're not always, there's a difference between an apprenticeship with the goal of taking somebody through a 5-year program and producing a well-rounded journeyman, and somebody who calls them an apprentice so that they have cheap labor for a job. Someday, if you want to have a discussion about the things that I see in the affidavits that are filed, that it's pretty disconcerting when you see a contractor have 7 apprentices on the job, and 3 of those 7, the duration of their apprenticeship was from the beginning of the project to the end of the project, and they were canceled. If that's the case, were they really ever an apprentice at all? Ever were they just cheap labor to be discarded, So anyway, I would always encourage you to support apprenticeship. It's offered a great opportunity for myself and my family, 40 years ago, and
30
it's
seconds,
improving
please.
lives every day. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Luis Aragon. I'm a resident of Whatcom County. I'm a member of Local 292. I joined the union about 20 years ago here in Bellingham, Local 276, and I was a member of Local 872 in Las Vegas. I'm here to let you know that I went through the apprenticeship, and I can personally tell you that it wasn't just a matter of meeting numbers and getting guys out there who qualify for a contractor to get a bid. I've worked alongside those types of apprentices. I've worked alongside real apprentices, and the quality of work and safety and knowledge of the craft it's just, there's no comparison. I've worked in open shop states, jobs, multiple states, and I can tell you the work gets done on time, under bid, early. I just finished a job where we came in as a union contractor, finishing our work on time, early. We pick up extra work, and a lot of that is due to our training that we receive from our local unions in our apprenticeship. The apprentices that are turned out through these training programs, as far as I can speak for as a laborer, it's not a narrow scope of a hand. We do concrete, we do underground, we do high-rise, road work, demo, I mean, you name it, we can do it, and we're trained for it. As an apprentice, when I graduated, I was able to walk on to basically, within reason, any job site and know what I'm doing and doing it safely and efficiently. And I've heard a lot of reasoning as to why this type of apprenticeship utilization is bad for a company, the bidding, whatever. Those are excuses from, business owners that want to save a buck. As a hand on the job that has experienced injuries on the job, not personally, but people I've worked with, whether it being putting guys out of work for a small amount of time to guys who can't walk again. A lot of that stuff, unfortunately, happens to people who haven't been trained properly, educated, and not just their craft and task, but in safety lifestyle as far as
30
this
seconds, please.
goes in our line of work. It doesn't make it's not a negative thing for contractors. All it does is make their work in their hands higher quality and the work to be a higher quality. And as someone who graduated apprenticeship, I tell you, these contractors need this. Thank you.
Briggs.
Good evening, Council. Dana Briggs. It's another pleasant evening outside. Continuing story of climate change. Last week, there was a new study that was released that stated that we are at a carbon dioxide level that hasn't been seen in 3 million years. Let me repeat that, 3 million years. Humanity has only been in existence in a so-called civilized form for the last 11,000. Their conclusions were is that normally, with no human activity, the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere should only be at about 280. It's currently at 410. The last time carbon dioxide levels were like this, 3 million years ago, there were forests in Antarctica and the sea level was 65 feet higher than it is right now. Primary factor behind all this, the use of fossil fuels. The continued use of fossil fuels. It has to be stopped now. The refineries in this county, along with everywhere else in the country, and the pipelines and everything else associated with fossil fuels need to be shut down as soon as possible. And if they're not shut down as soon as possible, then we are going to end up destroying ourselves and other life forms on the planet. Their days are numbered. Their days are numbered not only economically because the cost per kilowatt hour of alternative energy systems is now below the fossil fuel industry in many cases, Your days are numbered because we can't afford to allow it to continue unless we're going to commit ecocide. You have a Climate Impact Advisory Committee. And if this is news to you, what I'm telling you tonight, then I would beg the one question of, why hasn't that advisory committee been talking to you about this? Second part of it is, last meeting you were provided a prototype of a city ordinance declaring a climate emergency. Every governing body in the country, including you, need to declare a climate emergency. And that's going to be the basis and the stepping stone for getting all of us educated on what it is that we need to do post-haste to prevent what's going to come down the pike, and especially for our children, grandchildren, and potentially many more generations to come. So I'm asking you politely,
30 seconds, please.
get on with it.
I'm Joe Baldwin. I live here in Bellingham, Washington. I'm a local contractor. I've been doing public works for about 35 years, on my own company here in Bellingham for 15 years. I'm one of those contractors that wants to save a buck, okay? Having an apprentice doesn't save me a buck, okay? The apprenticeship program right now are only union. There is no apprenticeship program for non-union. The 15% sounds like a little bit until you try to make it, because you have to have, I'm not positive anymore because I avoid any jobs that require 15% apprentices, but you have to have 3 or 4 journeymen per apprentice. So you have to have a very large crew to make that 15%, which the last one I worked on was with Lakeside Industries, and they had teamsters, operators, laborers, and they could barely make their 15%. For the last 10 years, we've been begging for people. There's no shortage of jobs for people that want to have a job, and they don't have to hire on as an apprentice and take 70%. If they come to work for me, I have to pay prevailing wage, and I have to pay them as a journeyman, not as an apprentice. And I'll hire your son, your daughter, tomorrow if they want to come to work, and they'll make top-rate wages. So the apprenticeship program, like I say, we avoid it at all costs whenever we see it on a job, because it's almost impossible for us to meet because we're a smaller company. We have operators and laborers, truck drivers, and we're not union. So we don't have an apprenticeship program that we can put people into. As far as manning your jobs with people you call apprentices, yeah, people do it because you have to meet the apprentice. So you take a journeyman and you call him an apprentice. Pay him 70% or pay him 100%, but you're just slipping him in as an apprentice to meet the 15% goal. So I say let the industry train those people. If I brought your son or your daughter on, we would train them. They don't have to go to school. We're dying for people. I mean, I'd hire 10 people tomorrow if I could find people that really wanted to come into this industry. But with the internet, computers, nobody wants to get out there and dig ditches, cut down trees, drive a truck, even though a good operator makes $120,000 a year.
30 seconds, please.
So bringing this into Whatcom County, and especially on $1 million, $1 million sounds like a lot, but it's not a real big job anymore. It does. I can have 4 guys do $1 million job. So I would say leave it as it is. Don't get involved with it. Please don't let Whatcom County put this into place. Thank you.
I have a question.
Brenna?
Yeah. How many people are in your company?
In my company, we have about 10 right now.
Yeah. Okay. If there was an apprentice program, like locally through the community college or the VOTEC or something, and it was for anybody, would you be interested in something like that?
And that is a good question, because there is no program. You guys want to put a 15% requirement, but the only people that have an apprenticeship program are the unions. So we're non-union, so we can't participate. So if you want to put the 15% requirement in, then start a school. Otherwise, it doesn't work out. we would put them in but why pay them 70% when they can get 100%?
If there's anybody else who wishes to speak at the open public session, please line up. Otherwise, we will close the session after this last speaker.
Hi, my name is Teresa Jones. I reside in Whatcom County, and I am a labor apprentice. I've been in healthcare since 2011 and had to make a decision for my family to be able to provide with the rising costs of housing. I have a freshman at Northern Arizona University, and to keep up with those costs, I had to make a decision to do a new job. And the apprenticeship program was ideal for me. I am very new. I got out of the program October 26th. I've just completed my second dispatch at Shell Refinery. In 5 weeks' time, I was trained in 5 different areas. I'm in the scaffold yard. I was able to run the elevator, expedite PPE to the workers. I also worked for the insulators as well as did fireproofing. The gentleman that spoke before me, it is not easy to go into a contractor and have them hire you at 100% level. Maybe for a smaller company, but it just doesn't really happen like that. So I'm a big fan of the apprenticeship. I'm learning a lot of new things, and without this, I wouldn't have this opportunity. Schooling is not an option for me. I don't have the finances. I'd have to work full-time as well as go to school full-time. And this is the best program for anybody that wants to learn multiple skills in order to work in the workforce.
Thank you. Anybody else for the open public session? Seeing none, we'll close the open public session, and we will now move on to the discussion on the ordinance regarding apprenticeships, and this is a discussion regarding the introduction of this ordinance. There will be no vote on this issue tonight. Now, just for clarity, there is an amended version of this, and there is a marked version that shows the differences between this and the one in the packet, and a clean version, and that is available. So with that, I think who wanted to lead off, Mr. Sadhu?
I can start. It's my favorite subject. I just want to give a little background in the sense that that I did work with apprenticeship programs for 7 years. And I was a dean at Bellingham Tech. I did the education part of it. And there are more nuances to apprenticeship program being a technical college. Technical college is not apprenticeship, period. They have nothing to do with that. A lot of people assume you go to tech college, you can become apprentice. Not true. The second thing is, what we have undone in 30 years, we have thrown the baby with the bathwater. We were all, as a nation, against the unions. We annihilated them. Yes, there were few problems with the unions, and unions need to admit that too, and they have cleaned their act. But one of the biggest things we lost is the pipeline of new workers coming through in each trade. That's one part. It cannot be now fixed in 1 or 2 years. It will take time. Why? If a contractor gets a job with the county and he has 4 different trades, you can't have an apprentice per se, a generic apprentice. Apprentice either has to be electrical, they have independent electricals contractors, which is non-union people. There's IBEW, they are also Brotherhood of Electricians, they are union people. And same is CITC, same is sheet metal people. So there is a whole variety of people, and then they have some firewalls. If you are an electrical worker, you cannot go do another work. You are into that cubbyhole. So when we say that a person taking a city or county job should have 4 apprentices, it depends on how many kind of trades he's going to do, he's going to need an apprentice for that particular trade. I will tell you, I am for this program. I am for this ordinance. I'm not really against it, I'll tell you. But I'm saying this is not an easy thing. Let's put a paper out there. We will get so many pseudo apprentices, like somebody did point it out, and I was writing myself. There are real apprentices, which means that you join, you want to be a laborer, you want to be an electrician, you want to be a sheet metal worker, you want to be a welder, then you have to spend 4 or 5 years in that trade. When there is no work, you may have to sit home. You can't say, oh, I was in the welders, but you need a laborer, I can be your apprentice. Then next month you say, I need a job, I can be your apprentice. It doesn't work that way. The end point is the contractor gets the job done because he showed his 15%. The loser is the student. Loser is the worker, because now he has nothing to show for his apprenticeship, and he can never become a journeyman. And we think that the guy had a 15% hours in apprenticeship. I'll give you an example that when they were building the Northwest Indian College and they were building the Lummi High School, they got federal money, and it came with that caveat that 20% or 25% must be apprentice hours. And they scrambled for 18 months. We at Bellingham Tech could help them to how to generate apprentices. We had to have the plumbing people, I don't want to waste a lot of people's time, but I want to tell you, there were 10, 12 different trades, and then those people were supposed to be native people, so much percent. And it took us 18 months to just get the apprentices ready so that they can be hired as apprentices in their trades. So it's not that you can get a high school kid and say, okay, we're going to put a label on you, you're an apprentice tomorrow. You have to there are 4 different bodies, CITC, IBEW said, there's a National Training Council and National Training Council Board. I may not have the right name. If you are a contractor, you have to get your apprenticeship program approved. You have to write a 4-year thing that how you will take an apprenticeship, how you will run him through the 4 years, what his skill levels and would be, what he would be, outcomes after the end of 4 years. And then you have to take it there to Olympia, and they will sit down and approve it. And then you have to follow that, and then you have to keep track of that. So, okay, I sound like a negative person here. I'm not really negative. I just wanted to give the background of apprentices and background of tradespeople and how they develop and how they actually become that they can get full wages, and they call themselves journeymen and they call themselves professionals. So to be able to do that, one of the things is the unions and the open shop people. I'll talk about that. Because we had so much wage differences before. That was the biggest thing what unions' downfall was. There's a carpenter working for $20 an hour. There's a carpenter working next door with $60 an hour. That high wages. And nobody paid attention to that. And that's why unions got bad name. Because they were making money, so they didn't want to look at it, what we are doing. And they're equally capable person just didn't had a union label, was making $25 an hour. So I think that what we need to do is the open shop and other shop. If our wages are comparable, they are comparable today, you know why? There's a shortage of our workers. We need to come up, we at county level cannot. I'm not really preaching for that. What I'm saying is there are many nuances to that. If they are there, people will gladly join unions. There are other things with the unions which came as, unintended consequences. It's not only wage, it's the career of the person you're putting online. So the other part, sorry, I'm going to take a couple of more minutes because this is very important. My proposal would be, my suggestion would be, not a proposal, that what we should do, we should start like phasing in. The phase in here is, I want to propose upside down phase in. We should do anything with $5 million or more, they should have 15%. And then in 1 year, we will bring it down to $4 million job. Then we will bring it to $3 million job. Then, like, I'm just suggesting, don't stick to my numbers. I'm just saying it should be done to companies who have a workforce of 50, 70 people right now, and they bid for sizable jobs who are able to do that. Then we start with them. And the other people have this message that this is coming to me. I got to get on with this program. And then we should say, okay, then we should do for lesser. And then we'll come to $1 million or whatever number is, I don't know, because Seattle wages and Seattle work, $1 million is nothing. They come and redo your home for $1 million or a small little building. So for our county, we need to be cautious. I am all for this program. I think this is a great thing. I spent 4 years going to every high school in the county to tell the grade 11 and 12 kids, get the other 4-year degree, get the original 4-year degree. I know that how hard it is. Just making this thing, you will create hardship. Actually, there will be more unemployed people because they can't put them on there. So we should be cautious about it, how to implement it. That's what I want to say. I'll stop here.
I think Mr. Bird was next, and Ms. Frazee.
Oh, wait, go ahead.
Ms. Frazee.
I just had a question about, I didn't get to read over it again, but will it, like Mr. Smith said, will it be a certified, is that in the wording here, a certified apprentice program?
Approved.
The term is actually registered.
Registered, is that in here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other question, will we ideally have enough students to fill these roles by 2021? Do we feel like the contracts we get, will there be enough students in this program to fill these roles?
So if you're asking
I
me-
guess, I don't know.
I just want to be respectful.
Response?
I want to be respectful of the sequence, but if I can respond to that. So a couple of things. One is there is a phase-in, and the phase-in reflects exactly mirrors what is now currently used as the phase-in program for the state program. So there is a state program that applies for educational institutions and for transportation projects. So the difference between the original draft and the new draft is it mirrors the state phase-in program. So that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is there are exceptions granted for people who make a good faith effort to find apprentices and are unable. So if the requirement is, say, 10% apprentices and you just can't find the apprentices, you're not penalised, provided you can demonstrate you did make a good faith effort to find the apprentices. So I think does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thanks.
Mr. Bird was next.
I'm curious, how do you qualify or quantify a good faith effort? I mean, if I go to the program and I ask for X amount of students, they don't give them to me, is that a good faith effort, or do I then have to go to a union shop and say, well, can you give me your apprentices?
Well, again, if I can answer the question, I would think that an appropriate way to mirror that is what you have to do now if you want labour certification to bring in an immigrant to do a job. You have to demonstrate that you've advertised for the position and demonstrated, a good, showing examples of where you've advertised, how long you've advertised.
So to answer my question, though, would advertising to whatever the apprenticeship program is be enough, or if that doesn't fill my requirement, do I have to go beyond that?
Well, I think you would advertise through the normal channels that you would hire apprentices or tradespeople.
What are those channels?
Well, WorkSource, I think, is one of them.
As an apprenticeship program?
No, Mr. Smith might be able to give me a better idea as to
I
where.
think we should seek that, yeah.
So if if I'm a non-union shop and I'm going to hire someone into, what's the program I'm going to put them into?
So there's multiple options. They can buy into the CITC program, they can get into the unionized apprenticeship
What's the
programs.
CITC?
It's a state accredited apprenticeship program.
Is that a union program or a non-union? Okay.
It's a open
It's
shop
just a
program.
training program.
Right.
Okay. Who's that through and where's it located?
I know it's through the state of Washington. I know the closest one I know of is in Seattle.
Okay.
Is there one in Marysville?
Marysville, yeah.
So there's not one here in Whatcom County?
No.
So, tell me this, 2007, 2008, I know some of the construction company owners in town, and they laid off 70, 80% of their staff. Senior level people that have been there for years and years and years. We go back into a bad economy in the next couple of years, and they're having to lay off staff. Do they now have to lay off even more senior level staff because they have to meet this apprenticeship requirement?
I think
I
one
have
of
to have 15% of people that are coming into that workforce in the first 4 years to meet that quota, but I have to lay off people. Tell me how I don't have to lay off more of the people that have been with me for 10 years that I'm paying a good salary to meet that quota and keep the 15%.
Do you wish me to answer that question?
Yeah, I want to answer that. The thing is, when you cannot just hire apprentices and go happy and do that. You need a journeyman to supervise them. There are conditions of employing an apprentice, and that person must be a journeyman. You cannot say, I have a 20-year experience as a carpenter, and I can be your supervisor. It doesn't work that way.
Right, okay.
So
then they wouldn't qualify for the job. If they had to lay off staff, and now
Yeah.
they don't have enough journeymen to have enough apprentice, now they just couldn't qualify, period.
I think layoff is a much further thing. We should actually see how we can implement it. This is a good plan. It's a good program. I think we need have 3 or 4 different union people and couple of independent contractors in a room and then find out a way what they will do that. I would like to see this happening, but it cannot be just let's put an ordinance out there. It will not work what we are trying to achieve.
Okay, I'd still like an answer to my question. 'Cause,
Yes.
To me, what I feel like I heard you just say was that we don't need to look down the road and see what the risks might be to the program. We should just give it a shot. And I would much rather us consider all of the risks and know what those are right now. So can someone tell me, if I have to lay off 70% of my staff and my journeyman number decreases from 100 to 30 people, and I have to have 4 for each apprentice, now I'm allowed to have 6, 7 people or apprentice? Does that meet my quota? And if it doesn't, now I can't bid on that job? What happens there? How do we manage that or account for that?
Mr. Smith.
So.
All right, I can't take comments from the back of the room.
As far as it goes, I'm going to break your question down into a couple of pieces. I can't speak for all contractors, obviously, right? As far as what we saw during the recession, yeah, there was a lot of layoffs, and it was pretty much across the board. It wasn't a case of we'd let go of a project manager so that we could keep an apprentice. That was based on the workload that they had, and the contractor makes that decision, not the apprenticeship program or the union or the AGC or anything like that. That's a business decision, not something that we generally get involved in. As far as a contractor, the ordinance doesn't speak to what a journeyman is. It says that you have to meet a state guideline or an apprenticeship guideline for a number of hours and a level of training to become a journeyman. But like if a contractor comes in and signs up and signs into our apprenticeship program, we don't go through and vet their entire workforce and say, that's a journeyman, that isn't, that is, that isn't. That's a contractor decision. They know who has experience. If a guy's got 20 years as a carpenter, maybe he's got a ton of experience. So the ordinance and any other ordinance that I'm aware of doesn't actually address that specifically. That's a business decision, not an apprenticeship question. Yes, you have to have journeymen to train your apprentices. You wouldn't want a whole crew of apprentices where nobody knew what they were doing and nobody was actually training them. So there is rules about that. So like with the laborers, yes, we generally run 3 to 1, three journeymen to 1 apprentice. There are ways on some projects where those can be modified, but that's a decision above my head and has to do with the level of training and what they can do with the workforce that they have.
So, if I may, I just want to make sure that this is conducted in an open and free atmosphere, so I want to invite Mr. Callaway to respond to any of these issues as well. If there are other people who do, if we call on other people, do understand that all comments must be made on the microphone and you must identify yourself before you make the
So
comment.
I'm going to
Well,
illustrate
I'd like
kind
to
of
ask a question.
what my question item was, though. If I have a staff of 100 people,
Okay,
if I have a staff of 100 people and I lay off 70% of them because of a bad economy, then it gets me down to 30. But let's say there's a job out there that has a need for 30 people. If this requirement requires that 15% of those people are apprenticed, then I'm going back to my 100 and saying, okay, when I lay off those 70, I'm going to end up having to lay off some of the senior people so I can keep 5 apprentices on, even though senior people have been with me forever, so that I can meet that quota of having 5 for that project.
I would suggest going with your hypothetical, right? That, yes, 15 hours out of every 100 is what we're looking at, right? There are exceptions. I haven't seen the marked up copies of this ordinance. There are exceptions and ways that you can get waivers for good faith efforts. So I don't necessarily believe that you would be losing top staff. Maybe I'm idealistic. None of our contractors had a big problem with that going through the recession. They lost crews across the board. Work went down, overhead went up, they had to pare down. As soon as the work picked back up, and they had requirements, whether it was DOT, City of Seattle, Shoreline, any of these other ones, they picked up apprentices and they went to work and they brought their journeyman back. So workload would dictate the size of their crews. As far as what they keep, as far as staff over and above that, that's up to the individual contractor. I can't really speak to it.
So can I just interrupt?
The threshold, right?
I just need to interrupt for a second. Mr. Buchanan, you seem to have a question about procedure.
This seems to be like it's becoming an unnoticed public hearing.
Yeah, or
Okay,
something.
well, again,
Doesn't seem
the
right.
council voted to continue this discussion.
That's not what I'm saying. This is not a council discussion. This is becoming a public hearing.
Okay, so if the council wishes to do something different, I need a motion to do that. That's all. I'm trying to follow the will, what I interpreted was the will of the council.
I understand that, but this is unnoticed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Well, for me, then.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if we.
How do
we're
you
supposed-
define the difference?
Ms.
between
Brown
the two?
Davis, perhaps you can give us some guidance on this.
The best thing to do, in my opinion, would be for you to hold this in committee in 2 weeks, discuss it prior to introducing it. So don't introduce it tonight, but introduce it following a discussion in committee.
Okay, so
And since it's Public Works, it would be in the Public
Okay.
Works Committee.
So with that, so from a procedural perspective, do you feel we are on safe ground to continue this discussion tonight, or?
I think she already told you.
I believe that because it wasn't noticed as a topic that was going to be discussed tonight, there may
Right.
have been other people that would have shown up tonight to talk about it.
Right, okay, fair enough.
Very
So,
listening.
so it sounds like the best course of action is to hold this for today and then introduce it in 2 weeks' time,
Correct.
for which the public hearing would be in 4 weeks' time.
If you're going to have this item would not require a public hearing, but if you wish to have a public hearing,
Well,
then
it's an
yes.
ordinance, so it would require a public hearing.
Not all ordinances
Okay,
require
all right.
public hearings.
Excuse me, before we shut this down, though, could you please, and you please, and you please leave your name and phone number with our clerk here? Thank you.
I'll move that this be held for committee in 2 weeks.
I have a motion to hold. Mr. Buchanan seconds. Further discussion?
I second that. I have a discussion about this, is that we should actually seek from the employer, like even our own department people have the experience, like Public Works especially, they are the ones who use most contractors, and we should seek what is their take on that is. That's one thing. Second thing is that we should seek like the business agents of 3 or 4 different trades and get their thing. And then we should seek some guidance from the independent contractors, open shop versus union shop. Because I think why I'm saying this, we as council are not really very knowledgeable in that. And I have been away from technical college for 10 years. It was 2008 I quit my job. So things have changed. But I know I was in the middle of that, and it is a lot of nuances to this thing. And what I don't want to see is that we put something and call the word pseudo apprentice is hurtful to that worker, because for sake of money and job, the worker would say, I want to be your apprentice. Then what happens to that person 6 months down the road when one job is finished? And people can't do a sheet metal apprentice and an electrician apprentice and this apprentice and that apprentice.
Okay.
So-
Just a reminder,
Going on and talking about this. I thought this was supposed to be for the committee meeting. Because I have some more, I'd like to ask some questions. then,
we are
too.
discussing the motion to hold this in committee, is it?
Well, then I want to discuss it too.
All right, Ms. Brenner.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that everybody who spoke about this, please leave your name and phone number, because I want to talk to everybody who spoke about it. And if any of you didn't and still want to leave your name and phone number, that's okay too, but put a little star if you did speak to it, because I got some information from people. And I just want to be able to talk to people. Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion to hold in committee?
So just to be sure,
Well, this was supposed to be.
It's the motion to hold this, I guess, for 4 weeks.
will we hold in a committee?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the end of the world. Sorry, Dana, if you're still here.
And Mr. Chair, what committee are we?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear on that too. I think,
About Public Works.
It would be a public
It could be
works.
public
I'll
works,
take
it
it
could be
on.
Parks, it could be.
Natural resources.
No way.
I can put it
No
in
way.
finance and administrative services.
Public Works.
order, please. So,
Criminal justice.
committee of the whole, okay, so.
Okay, committee of the whole is good.
All right. So the motion is to hold the introduction of this for 2 weeks for the committee of the whole. Okay? All in favour of seeing any further?
I don't want it in committee of the whole, I want it in
Sorry,
Public Works.
I'm sorry, Mr. Byrd. Would you please restate your motion for clarity?
Yeah, my motion is to have it in Public Works, held for that committee.
Okay, so we have that motion, so that motion's been
Otherwise, I just
changed.
wonder why we have committees at all, if we're
Why
just going
have
to put
Public
everything in
Works
committee
Committee?
of
This
the
is like
whole.
you guys want to control everything, and you're chair of this, so you'd be chair of the Committee of the Whole. Let somebody else do something for a change.
Okay, that's my motion.
Okay, so Mr. Sadhu had seconded a motion I think was different.
Not Barry had seconded.
Do we have a second to Mr. Byrd's motion?
I do not agree that it should be in Public Works, because the contracts could be let to parks, they could be let to other departments that are outside of that committee.
Yeah.
That's the only
Public
reason.
Works projects. It says right in that thing, they are Public Works projects.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
This is,
I think this is
Okay, I will second it. I don't really.
I already seconded
I'm
it.
just trying to make sure it lands in the right spot, but.
Public Works.
so there's a motion and a second to put this in the Public Works Committee.
No, first was, we have not disposed of the committee of the whole yet.
Well, he
No, no, no,
amended
no.
it.
Oh, that was your motion, okay, okay.
Motion.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make sure we're clear on what is, so your motion,
Public Works, I'm okay with that.
your motion, Mr. Byrd, is to
You're okay with it.
put it in discussion for Public Works in 2 weeks, correct?
Yes.
With the intent, well, that it'll be scheduled for introduction that night, is that correct?
That will get discussed in Public Works.
I think that's up to Dana and Public Works. I mean,
Well, that'll be the normal process, I would assume.
Doesn't need a
It
committee.
depends how we do in the committee.
This isn't, yeah, this whole thing has been done.
You can add it to introduction if you get through it in committee.
Yeah,
Okay, all right,
yeah.
all right. So, for clarity, do you accept that the motion is to hear this in Public Works in 2 weeks for introduction that night?
no, it's to hold it
Yep.
for hearing and discussion and Public Works.
Yep.
And
Okay,
then
but
whatever
the-
Public
And then
Works
we
decides.
we all
I'm-
decide.
So then is
Then
your,
they- like Dana said, if they want to approve it for introduction that night, they can, but it'll be up to that committee.
Okay.
I'm not even sure who's on that committee, so
I am.
I'm not on that one.
okay, so,
Yeah, so,
so I just, now this is an interesting thing, I just want to make sure I understand, is the intent then that if it doesn't pass through Public Works, that it is effectively, it's effectively not put in for introduction?
I have no intent. It is.
How about we just
scheduled
go
for
one step
that.
at a time?
Okay, well, okay, so
I
I'm,
agree with
okay.
Ms. Brennan.
So the motion is to put it in Public Works,
Period.
right? That's your second? All in favour, say aye.
Oh, wait a second, wait a second. I had my
you want-
hand up. I
Okay,
need to
Mr.
say my
Sadhu.
piece. I need to say my piece. My piece is that we don't need to rush it. Like, this is not something that, oh my God, we have to do it this month. We just discussed it today, right?
And look at all
I
of
would
them.
say and people are listening to this at home. This can be a big discussion thing, and it's about jobs of people, it's about contractors' viability issue, as well as unions' viability issue. I rather see that unions grow and we get more of our kids into these apprenticeship programs,
We
which
all
will
wanna
be
do
good
that,
for
yeah.
everybody. But what I'm saying is, taking another 2-3 weeks is not going to make
Or
any
months
difference.
or whatever it
We-
takes.
Yeah, why are we in a rush?
Years or-
Like I'm saying, let's discuss in 2 weeks, and if we are able to get to some kind of consensus, get more feedback, we'll move on, otherwise we'll wait.
That's the motion.
I think that's wise.
So, I wish to speak to this, but I
Call
want to give
for the
someone,
question.
I want to give someone else a chance.
I think she.
How come when you call
point
for
of
the
order.
question
All
when
right.
I'm talking and I can't go any further?
Okay, the motion has been called for a question. Is there a second for the call, to
Second.
call for the question? All in favour of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Pass.
That passes. So the question has been called. All right, all those in favour of putting this in Public Works for 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, say aye.
Aye.
No. It passes, first one passed 6-1 with Brown opposed, and I think the second one passed 6-1 with Brown opposed. Is that correct? Yep, okay.
That was fun.
No, it is a good thing.
Learned version of what fun is, I'll tell
All
you.
right, okay,
Water Mining Advisory Committee.
Y'all were just feeling these meetings are getting too short.
all right.
All right.
Okay.
Now it's my turn.
Mr. Sadhu.
Yes, sir. All right. So this is the consent agenda, item 1 through 4, and they received, except item 3, they all received 3-0 vote. And the item 3 received 2-1 vote. And I so move for approval, item 1 through 4.
1 through 4,
Ms. Brenner.
I want to pull 3.
Okay, so it's been requested pull 3, so you're resubmitting 1, 2, and 4?
1, 2, and 4.
Okay, so the motion is for 1, 2, and 4. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, those pass 7-0.
Okay, now the item 3, AB 2019-195, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Cascadia Law Group, PLCC, to develop specific text amendments to the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan and Whatcom County Code that implement and are consistent with the provisions of the resolution number 2019-004.
It's been moved for approval. Discussion.
I move approval.
Second.
Second to Ms. Brenner.
You know, I wasn't sure before originally, I wasn't happy about it, but I just have felt that this contractor, this law firm, can't be objective. I feel like they've got a bias, and I don't want to see anything we do about Cherry Point or anything like that. I want it to be an independent kind of a law firm. And I did research on this law firm, and the guy was great. I thought he was really nice and really helpful. I wouldn't care if the attorney was dorky. I don't really care. I want somebody who's just going to be objective and not help us figure a way to do certain things rather than keeping it open, which I don't think it's been doing. And you know what? That reminds me. To be doing something like this, somebody else brought it up, so I'm not taking the credit for it, but we talk about this kind of stuff it should be open and transparent. This wasn't transparent. This originally was done in executive session, and I don't think that was right either. So maybe it was legal, but I don't think it was right. So I have a problem with it. And for me, either we start over or I'm not supporting this.
Mr. Sadhu?
I think when we say that this firm is biased, it can be looked in a different way. The firm has a certain expertise. We were like, when we receive the briefs from the Cherry Point industry, they are biased too. Of course they have to be biased because they want to talk about their business. They want to talk about how they can present their viewpoint. I think the original intent when we talked to Cascadia Law or we gave the specifications to the county prosecutor that we were looking for a company or an attorney who has an expertise in city and county ordinances or county and city codes related to refineries and fossil fuel industry. That was the thing. Now, of course, they're biased because that's their expertise. If I go to a lawsuit and I want to get an expert on a certain part of my lawsuit, of course that person has an expertise in that, and we can call it bias. Fair. But that is the expertise of that person. So we cannot just negate it that his advice is bad. Now, we don't have to take that advice. This is just the person is coming in and giving that perspective with their expertise. Do we take that or not? That's up to us. We don't hire an attorney to come and tell us what to do, and we say we're going to do exactly what you said. That's not what we hire subject matter experts for. We hire subject matter experts for where we lack the understanding because we knew that we cannot violate Commerce Clause. We cannot violate a lot of export laws. We cannot violate a lot of business and commerce rights of businesses. We all know that. So knowingly, we wanted to get an expertise who can actually enlighten us that you being a county council person or county council have only these 2-3 alternates that you can act on. That's not bias. That's telling us and put us in our place, what we can and cannot do. And I am seeking more of that. I'm not seeking that, somebody's going to tell me and say, you should be against the refineries. No, they had laid out so many points. In his testimony was public. What we did in the executive session was to give him the direction. He was looking clarification how his report should reflect. We gave him that direction. But when the report came, it was a public testimony. It's a public document. And we are just seeking to tell us, to guide us so that we don't make a mistake. That's how I take it, at least. I'm just presenting what I take it, what we are asking Cascadia Law. Calling them biased, sure, anybody can call them anything.
Well, I think you even just stated the case I was making. You most certainly did think, well, the refineries have their opinion too, just like this law firm's opinion is different from theirs. Why should it be different or not different? Oh, you said it. You said it, not me. I'm just saying I want an independent third party, not someone who generally works on a certain side of an issue. And I don't know how much clearer to make that. I want a law firm that, there's plenty of law firms that have expertise that don't do a lot on a certain side of an issue. I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to get in trouble, and I want to get the law firm, I'm not saying bad things about the law firm. I think the guy was really great. He was very informative. I don't want this law firm, period. And if you keep arguing with me, I'll keep arguing back with you.
Sure,
so.
you can, but
All right.
that's what the whole beauty is.
Well, you're the one who said, you put your opinions on what I was doing, and they weren't, that's not what they were.
Mr. Sadhu, Mr. Donovan's next.
I just wanted to clarify that the way I look at it. Now,
Mr.
I'm,
Sadhu, sorry, Mr. Donovan.
oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that, I mean, the process with the prosecutor's office brought this law firm to us. Maybe it's a bit opaque, but it was a process that is sort of standard in terms of how we find outside counsel. I think it was similar to how the firm that was brought in to do the work on the Hearst decision, it wasn't like that firm. The prosecutor's office was involved in that selection. But as far as them being objective, I don't think I can convince you, but I think the executive retained this firm for work unrelated to this because they were impressed by the firm, and we can ask Mr. Schroeder about that.
Did you say the executive?
The executive office did use Cascadia for another job. Mr. Schroeder, do I have that mistaken? I will have to double check that.
Let the record show that Mr. Schroeder said he did not recall that.
Thanks. But actually, the thing I didn't pick up the part about him being dorky. What was that?
Yeah, I don't mind if it's, I mean, this guy was he was pretty cool.
Oh, so but if he was dorkier, that'd be better?
No, I'm saying, but I don't care about if he's cool or dorky. I care about being objective.
Are you finished, Mr. Don? Yeah. Mr. Sadhu?
I just want to bring home what my intention is, and I'm not really putting it on to you, Ms. Brenner. I'm just thinking through how I perceive this thing. I have a heart surgery. I need to change my valve, and I call 3 different doctors. The one guy comes, says, Satpal, do nothing. You have 5 years to live. You will be fine. And another doctor comes in, no, Satpal, if you do this procedure, because that person is biased. He's expert in that procedure. And he is coming and recommending me, no, Satpal, we have a special technique, and we will come and do this, and you may live for 10 years. And then another person comes in, and he tells me that he is from Ayurveda or some, naturopathy, and comes and tells me, I'm going to give you 3 potions, and you'll be all fine. So, you think the guy in naturopathy is biased? No. He's giving his expert opinion in the field he knows. The guy who want to cut me up and change few things, he's giving his opinion and his bias. I have to make a decision. Do I do nothing and live for 5 years happily? I will do that. So that's what up to us. Like, that's what I'm saying is, yes, you may not like that one firm or something, or may not like their opinion, is your prerogative. But just saying that why you are getting an expert opinion is bad for you, I don't agree with that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not really putting them in best position, right position. They're opposition to refineries. They're opposition to this. No, that's not the point here. The point here is us to learn that when we make a decision, are we actually qualified or learned enough to make that decision? That's what I'm looking for.
Mr. Bird?
I'm going to vote no on this. I think that our budget, as is, we've already had a number of additional requests come forward for more financing needs than what we were able to make during our budgeting cycle last fall. This is one of those requests on top of that. And instead of spending this $40,000 for an attorney to work with staff to come up with this, I would rather see us not spend the money and to continue working on it in public through committee and the council and make those decisions. I think that would be a better use of our funds. And I think it would also be a better, more transparent process for our community. Yeah.
Ms. Brenner?
And also, I just have to say this, no good naturopath will give you a potion and tell you you're going to be fine.
I'm from India, I know that.
Okay, further, Mr. Donovan.
As Mr. Bird left with the budget thing, I think in the previous biennium appropriated $150 for this contract and spent barely half of that. And this $40,000 is money that would otherwise been budgeted to a legislative analyst for staff advice, legislative advice to the county council. And it's coming out of our council budget. So it's not like this could be used for other purposes except the ledge analyst that we don't have staff for right now.
Mr. Bird?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the council budget comes out of the general fund? So those funds that are in the general fund would, if they weren't used, could be allocated to something else in the general fund that's outside of the council potentially?
Council allocated this money to the council to have a legislative analyst, to have staff capacity to do the kind of work that we don't have staff to do. So we're essentially paying an attorney to do the work that we would have potentially a ledge analyst in-house to do. But it is general fund money, but I'm saying this is money, this is less money than we originally budgeted in the previous biennium, that there's a complaint in the executive's letter about the scope of work not being completed, but he never authorized the full contract for the work to be completed. So we're now using council's legislative analyst funds to pay for this. So yeah, it is all general fund money, but it's not like we're pulling this out of something that hadn't previously been allocated.
Brenna?
I'm not sure I understood what you said, but this is more money. We got what the council majority wanted to get at that time. This is for more information. This isn't because we had a contract that said what would be done, and it was in that amount. So now this is a new amount.
Mr. Bird?
If I was to compare the two as well, I think I'd be forced to do that. I'd rather have a legislative analyst helping us on this issue and other issues while we work through it in public committee over a year than having an attorney work with it with staff for a much shorter period of time and only work on this issue behind closed doors. So I think that there's just the benefit. If you were going to spend the money, I'd rather have the legislative analyst helping us work through it in committee out here.
Mr. Donovan?
The behind closed doors and lack of transparency is clearly becoming a campaign talking point that we hear over and over. So I feel obligated to respond to this. The fact that staff will be working on this does not make it any more behind closed doors than any other process that we ever have, generally have. This is an attempt to get this to a resolution where you actually finally have some code that we sent to the Planning Commission. And I haven't necessarily seen, to be fair, much willingness on any effort here to put this forward. Whether we had a ledge analyst to do this or not, that would have been great. But I think we should move this on, get the code written. Yes, staff will be working on this. Yes, there'll be attorneys working on this. This is how we do our code. It will go to the Planning Commission. There'll be public hearings. It'll come back to this council. But this idea that this is somehow lacking transparency and being done behind closed doors when it is how we do the business of making policy, I think we're going to keep hearing that. We'll keep this whole idea like we snuck this in during the 6-week Christmas break was the lack of transparency at one of the earlier meetings. And the staff somehow snuck it in. There's this continued sort of meme that this is somehow being done, quote, behind closed doors with a lack of transparency. And I just say I find that offensive. But, bring it on. I'm sure that it was the press release that the executive has released, and it's the talking points that'll be part of the campaign that's coming up. So we'll hear more of it.
Mr. Sadhu and then Ms. Brenner.
I was going to say, I agree with Mr. Donovan in the sense that we must bring this to conclusion. I have said that a month ago, 2 months ago also, that we have spent almost 2 years, or not almost, actually over 2 years, and we should just conclude this. And to do the conclusion, we need some right information so that we do it in a proper way. So I'm going to vote yes, because I would like to get it done. We already wasted. This is April. We would have started in January. We would have that report, and we would have made some decisions by now. I would like to do this, that we don't have to do any more extension of that moratorium and get it done with.
Ms. Brenner and then Mr. Bird.
Well, you have a choice of not doing another extension of the moratorium And if you don't, we're doing policy, this is policy. Policy is not done in executive session. And this was done, there was a big, the way it was handled was in executive session. So if that offends you, I'm sorry you feel offended. I think the whole thing's pretty offensive, so. Well,
Mr. Byrd.
I guess I wanted to define the difference for how I define those two things. Transparency to me is us having a conversation that's being live streamed and recorded where everyone can hear what our rationale is and what we're considering and what our thoughts are as it goes into the policy versus it happening behind the scenes where people can't hear those conversations and there is no recording and they cannot sit in and participate and learn about why those decisions were made. So there's the difference between transparency and what we do here and closed doors and what staff will do with legal.
Sir Donovan.
You are therefore saying everything that this county government does in terms of making policy and code is lacking transparency. And if that's your perspective, that's it. But we do rely on staff for virtually everything. We have no legislative analysts. The calling their meetings and the work that they do on a daily basis not transparent and being done behind closed doors when it is then brought to us in open public meetings repeatedly, I guess we have a different perspective on what transparency is. Fair?
Ms. Brenner.
well, mine's a little, no offense, but mine's a little different. Transparency is what he said, but I don't think staff doing stuff is not transparent because they send us memos. It's all out in the open. We say out in the open what we want, or we say it in committee or whatever, and they bring us stuff back in the way of memos and stuff. That is still transparent. So I'm not sure what you meant when you said staff, but, so, yeah, policy is supposed to be out in the open.
Mr. Byrd.
Actually, I'm going to go different direction.
As long as it's on topic.
I'll try to keep it there. The process-wise, moving forward, if this is going to get approved, obviously, what happens? It goes, and because last time we talked about it was being sent to planning. So now legal's going to work with staff, and then it will continue to planning. It's going to come back to us after that, and then go to planning. I mean, what's the order of operation now?
I'll tell you. My understanding is staff, and this is reading the executive's letter and the interpretation of the contract, staff and Cascadia are going to try to come up with code language. Anything that comes out of that process has to go to the Planning Commission and come back to us. So and I have no idea what's going to come out of this process, to be honest. But yeah, it's not all that different than we're doing the shoreline management update. There will be outside consultants. They'll be working with staff. They'll come up with language. It'll go to the Planning Commission. It'll come back to us. Or when we did the critical areas update.
All right, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That's 2, Byrd and Brenner opposed. So that passes 5-0. Sorry, 5-2 with Brenner and Byrd opposed. Mr. Sadhu. Oh, sorry, next item was natural resources.
Natural Resources had a resolution to support funding stewardship forestry positions. The text says from the Department of Natural Resources, Small Forest Landowner Program. This is Councilmember Brenner's resolution to the legislature to continue funding this, so the services that Whatcom County has in terms of consulting and advice for small forestry will continue. There's some discussion about where that will go to the legislature, but that was approved 3-0. Ms. Brenner.
I spoke to Tyler, Mr. Schroeder, Deputy Executive Schroeder, and I spoke to the executive also. They sent Dana, where it goes to, like, what is it called? The Senate Ways and Means, and then the House, begins with an A, I think, House something.
Yeah, I can't remember, but
Yeah,
there
but
was
she's
those-
got it written down.
Appropriations.
Appropriations. I knew it began with an A.
But that was approved 3-0, recommended to the council.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Back to finance. Mr. Sadhu, back to you.
Sorry. The next item is AB 2019-176, ordinance amending the ferry system petty cash revolving fund from $1,800 to $3,300. It received 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
Been moved for approval. Any discussion? Is this a vote, roll call, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Carol Frazee. Yes. Satpal Sidhu.
Yes.
Barbara Brenner.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Sadhu.
Next item is AB 2019-184, ordinance amending the project budget for East Whatcom Regional Resource Center Expansion Project in the amount of $115,000. This also received 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Carol Frazee. Yes. Satpal Sidhu.
Yes.
Barbara Brenner.
Yes.
Red Brown.
Yes. That passes 7-0.
Okay.
Mr. Sadhu.
The next item is AB 2019-187, ordinance amending Whatcom County Code, Chapter 2.128, Business and Commerce Advisory Committee to amend membership. We had a discussion on this. There were a couple of suggestions were made, and we have the amended version in the yellow in front of us. And this also, the amendment also received 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing, Ms. Brenner.
Well, I would like to thank the council members who were in there and talked about it, and we came up with something that we can, I guess we can all support. I can support it now. I think it's great. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay.
Further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Carol Frazee. Yes. Satpal Sidhu.
Yes.
Barbara Brenner. Red Brown.
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Sadhu.
Okay, the next item is AB 2019-189, request authorization for county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Pacific CM LLC for material sample collection, on-site material inspection, on-site construction inspection, concrete testing, hot mix asphalt, HMA, aggregate, and other construction materials for various projects in the amount not to exceed $200,000. This also received 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
Move for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item up is approval of a letter in support of retaining the Alaska Marine Highway System between Bellingham and Alaska, AB 2019-209. The council requested that the chair draft this. Thank you to the county clerk who did most of the work. Is there any discussion on this?
Move approval.
Sorry, you're right, I was out of sequence. Mr. Buchanan moves approval, Mr. Bird seconds. Discussion, Ms. Brenner.
Just a real quick thank you to council members to do, because I didn't even know this was happening till you brought that forward. So,
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Mr. Sadhu, the next item is yours.
Oh, AB 2019-161, resolution celebrating April as month of Sikh awareness and appreciation in Whatcom County. There was a original resolution. We had a robust discussion on that, and some of the members gave different suggestions. And then I came to know that there is a resolution being passed by the Lieutenant Governor, or we got a copy of the resolution being passed in Olympia. Actually, I'm leaving there, going there tomorrow morning to speak on that occasion at the Senate floor. So I proposed, so that it's all neutral, I said, well, why don't we take the same resolution being passed at the Washington legislature and make few changes and put it as a Whatcom County so that we have no apprehension about promoting one religion over another or promoting any religion for that matter. So I am totally okay with either of the versions, and it is up to the council what they would like to do. By the way, I just want to share with you, today morning, City of Blaine Council and the mayor made the same proclamation. I just saw when I was coming on the Facebook, somebody sent it to me. Alicia had it in her hand and got her picture taken because I worked with Alicia and gave her the original version of that. And they revised, of course, they had their council work on it, but they approved it today. And
So just for clarity, what I have on the agenda is the green version. Is that what you're,
I am okay with either version, so I don't want to participate in that. I would like you guys to decide, because I'm saying this revised version or the previous version, I vote yes for either of them.
Do I have is someone going to make a motion?
Move approval.
Of which version? The green version. I would just like to point out, if you want to make an amendment, sorry, I need a second before.
Typo, yeah. I won't second that.
So Mr. Buchanan is second. Mr. Buchanan made the motion, Mr. Donovan second. And if I may, I just wanted to point out there's a typo, which was, it says Whatcom County prides itself on being a state.
I like that.
This one?
We're working on it.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I corrected that.
Right. So does someone wish to make a motion to amend?
I make motion to amend.
Who's the senators?
Who's the governor?
What needs to be
Yeah,
corrected?
please explain so that everybody knows.
The sixth
There was a
whereas.
typo or grammatical mistake.
I
You
don't
can
see-
read the new line, Mr. Brown, would you please?
So the line currently reads, Whatcom County prides itself on being a state, when it should read Whatcom
county.
County, that's it.
I didn't even
I
know.
propose amending it and saying county.
It was meant to be being in the state.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I wouldn't even have
Well,
noticed.
the motion is, Whatcom County prides itself on being a county. What?
Being in a state.
Yeah,
being-
in a
Is that
state,
what the
yeah.
I
motion
think
is?
that's what Mr. Stewart said.
We just say county.
Okay.
Then we're a county being proud of
I
being a
just
county.
need a motion, please.
I move to have it say in itself on being in a state where people.
There's a second on the motion. Mr. Byrd seconds. Discussion on the motion to
So-
amend. This is the discussion on the motion to amend. Any further discussion on the motion to amend, Ms. Brenner?
Why don't we just say county? Why, we're not supposed to speak for the state.
Okay,
Just say county.
county.
I mean, I think it's true, but
Is that, we have a motion on the floor.
And the motion that I meant to say was Whatcom County prides itself on being a county where people of all faiths and cultures
All
are.
right, do you accept the amendment, Mr. Byrd?
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Good way to do it.
I know, I'm such
All
a
right, all in favour of the motion to amend, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes 7-0. Now we're back to the main motion to approve, which was Mr. Buchanan's and Mr. Donovan's. Further discussion on the motion to approve, Ms. Frazee.
I just wanted to say, I'm going to stick with my original thoughts. I want to support all the sick events that occur in April. But in March 12th and March 26th, I did say that I want to keep government and religion separate, and there is religion in here. So, like, again, I do support the Sikh community and whatever events you have, but I'm going to abstain.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with one abstention. With a vote of 6-0 with Ms. Frazee abstaining. Next item up is executive appointments to boards and commissions. Request confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Dave Finney to the Whatcom County Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and for information, the county executive concurs with Mayor Linville's appointment of Stephen Gockley to the Bellingham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners.
Second.
Mr. Byrd moved it, seconded by Ms. Brenner. Discussion, seeing none, all, Mr. Byrd.
No, I just have a question. I'm just curious, the county executive concurs with Mayor Linville. Are we supposed to concur or like second, like, is there a
No,
thing
it's-
there?
It's just for information.
Well, it's the Bellingham Housing Authority, so.
It is a two-part.
Yeah.
This came to us last year or the year before also, yes. We have to confirm the executive's appointment and concur with his,
And the
Concurrence.
mayor.
So
is that
he
right, Tyler?
Confirms hers and we confirm his?
Yeah.
Okay,
He's nodding his head in the back.
love process.
I'm saving him the walk.
Process.
Okay. All right, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item up is introduction items. It sounds like that we are removing item number 7 for introduction, which was the apprenticeship item, as per the earlier discussion. So we are voting to introduce items 1 through 6 and item 8. Do I have a motion?
Move 1 through 6 and item 8.
McKenna moves for approval. Mr. Donovan seconds. Discussion.
It's item 8. What was
8
item
was
8?
added.
Right here, in the
Oh,
sound.
you removed this one?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that the second?
oh, the budget thing, yeah.
Second.
Further discussion
Go ahead.
on introducing items 1 through 6 and item 8. Seeing none, Ms. Brenner.
Well, just on item 8, do we want to, apparently, there's going to be some people, we got that email from the secretary at the Custer Gun Club. They wanted to come talk to us. Should we introduce this now, or should we wait till they speak to us about it?
I think you'd need to introduce it to have them speak to it, wouldn't you?
Would we?
Or it goes to committee again, right?
Well, you could not introduce it tonight.
And still have them,
You can do it either way. I would say introduce it tonight and allow them to come in 2
Okay.
weeks to speak to
all
you.
right.
Hold it if you want to.
Yeah, I would like to hold it and see what they have to say because.
Well, that's what I thought.
But you can hold it after the hearing if you wish.
Oh, you mean in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, is this for a hearing in 2 weeks? It's not for a hearing
No,
in 2
it'd
weeks.
just be,
It's just on for introduction.
Introduction tonight, and if the council wishes to move it forward for action in 2 weeks, you would have action in 2 weeks. It does not require a public hearing.
Okay.
I don't know, Tyler, is there some sort of a time limit on this one?
So Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. The reason it's being brought forward today with introduction is to be consistent with the other budget supplementals. We do budget supplementals once a month. So if you decide not to introduce it, you would just have to introduce it at the next meeting at
Another
that
whole
time
month.
after the committee meeting. Please do be aware that there was the discussion on the funding associated with it in the June date, which is somewhat of a deadline that we're trying to extend out. So that is the only deadline that I'm aware of it. We feel confident that we'd be able to extend it out. But it was more of a consistency issue of why we got it on for the budget supplemental introduction.
But
I'd like to move that we hold this then for, talking to some of the board members out at Plantation, they're going to be talking about it, Custer, thank you. They're going to be talking about it at their board meeting Thursday, and they have significant interest in possibly doing something here. So I think we hold it and see what the options are, and yeah.
So if I could, Tyler Schroeder again, remember this is a budget supplemental and how that relates to what work gets done. So I don't exactly know, and I'm sure Councilmember Byrd, you know a little bit more from where the Custer Gun Club is going and where the discussions are. But if there's any indication in which that discussion would have the improvements happen, then the budget supplemental could move forward. You guys could continue to talk about the policy from a council level on where the operations are in the future. But with the budget supplemental, it would be best if we started moving forward if the council does agree that we need to get that work accomplished, just as it relates to the time and the money associated with the grants.
If we moved forward with this, we'd be moving forward with the grant applications as well?
if we move forward with this, it would be the budget supplemental to accomplish the project.
So we'd be moving forward with investing the money in
Correct.
rebuilding those items.
Correct.
So, okay, I'm open for conversation on this, but for me, where I'm at right now is that if Plantation wanted to come in. Custer, thank you. It stuck in my head. If Custer wanted to take over operations, then this is something we probably wouldn't want to do because of the grant. And they would probably be able to do it probably a cheaper price because they wouldn't have the same prevailing wage issues or
They're nonprofit,
government contracting issues we have as a government if they did the work. So this is something that maybe the county wouldn't actually have to invest and do ourselves if someone were to take over operations out there. So open for discussion.
So for procedurally, I'd like us to ask, let's split item 8 out for a separate vote. Let's vote on items 1 through 6.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Is that
do it.
acceptable? All right, so all in favour of introducing items 1 through 6, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. Now, the discussion is, do I have a motion to do something with item 8?
How about hold?
Well, yeah, I'll move to hold, and then we can have a conversation and see where people want to go.
Okay, so there's a motion to hold. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Frazee seconds. Discussion on holding. Mr. Sadhu.
Yeah, I think that, we should keep in mind that there is asbestos in the thing, and that is a full disclosure. So we do it, or new buyer may do that. First thing is, we don't have nothing to sell. Actually, we don't own the property. We just have a lease. This is not a county-owned property. This is a leased property. And anything fixed on that building goes with the land. So when we disclose somebody that I got a car but need an engine, the guy is going to value that, I'm going to put $7,000 worth of engine in there. The guy is not going to say, give me because engine, I'll give you the full price. So we have $250,000 or something like that, which we can use the grant money to do that. One point. The second point, there is a window of construction which happens, and if the process moves forward, it will take 2-3 months to get the bids and all this, so to accomplish this thing. There is a speculation that they may come and take over. That thing can take 2 years of negotiations before somebody comes and say, yes, we'll take over and run that. And we haven't even seen that. Would they agree to a fixed rate for our police or border patrol and all this, there are a lot of things underneath this thing to just give it away, because if they spend $3 million, they will up the price to twice the price we are doing this. So I'm just putting my perspective on it, right? So, and if we do change the roof and somebody wants to buy it, we'll recover the money. It's not that we're going to say, okay, we'll still give you the same price as if it had a damaged roof and we fixed it, so we ate that money. I don't think that is realistic to do that. Either way, we postpone it, we don't gain anything, we do it. If everything falls through, then at least we have an operating range to work with. So that's what my opinion is. And
Brenna.
Well, all that stuff you talked about is public information. It's been in our packet and everything. And I'm sure whatever we do, we're going to keep it public. Second, I don't think we're going to hold it for very long. I don't want to miss that June deadline anyway. Let's hold it for 2 weeks, put it in committee, the discussion, and see what goes from there. I mean, then by Thursday, today's Tuesday. By Thursday, they're going to have discussed it, and they'll have something to say to us, one way or the other.
Mr. Bird.
So Ms. Brenner's right. On Thursday, they'll have a conversation at their board and make a vote of some extent to decide whether they wanted to move forward with this and request more information. If we did this and we invest $400,000 and get a grant for that, we're going to be required to repay that grant if we then go and transfer ownership. Now, for me, we could sell this property or the lease on it somehow, or the operations of it to recoup that. But when I consider the fact that we're losing $250,000 a year on it, I'm more than happy just to let someone come in and take over operations and not have to have that ongoing loss every year if they were able to maintain the same level of service moving forward. So for me, I'd rather not invest this money, let them make that investment and just take over operations and save the ongoing loss year over year from a financial standpoint. I think that we can have a fairly good idea within the next couple of weeks if that's something that they are very interested in and want to continue moving forward with. Like Councilmember Brenner said, it states in here about the problems with the building and asbestos. I forwarded this document on to them, as you all saw this morning, so they have this. They're well aware of what the property is and what it entails. As far as contracting or fixed pricing for law enforcement, our sheriff's department uses Custer Range already. They have a deal out there for that, so does Border Patrol. The law enforcement officers that are using Plantation are actually from other counties and other locations. So I'm not worried or concerned about that portion of it. Nothing else. One other thing is reading in the document, we're already working on an extension for December, so we will have time. We'll see, we can see if we get the extension or if we have to expedite it, but I think we have time to wait and see what our options are.
Rosie?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. I wanted to, it was $250,000 over 5 years, but still a loss that we're subsidizing.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say of holding this.
Wait a minute, in favor of what?
Sorry, did Mr. Donovan, do you have?
Yeah, just, so there's the bit in the amended version here about, under the current agreement, the roof needs to be completed in less than 90 days. What's that date from? This is in Mr. McFarland's memo, April 4th. Under the current agreement, the HVAC project needs to be completed in less than 90 days. These funds will not be available after December 31st.
Tyler Schroeder, I actually don't know off the top of my head. I apologize. Remember, council, this is just an introduction item. So if it's decided to introduce, we can have those discussions. These are good policy discussions you guys are having in regards to it, and make a decision on the budget supplemental in 2 weeks, or decide not to and just know that limits the 2-week window. And then if council decides to move forward, there will be just a smaller time and more time associated with getting the project done. But Councilmember Byrd is correct. The Parks Department has already applied for, is starting to go through the process with extending that June deadline to December. So we're anticipating that. I think council can make it one way or the other on the introduction, but it is just introduction. It's not an action item.
Yeah. Mr. Byrd and then myself.
Process on that, when would we know whether or not we get the extension?
I would have to double check and follow up.
So I'm going to speak against the motion to hold just for procedural reasons. It's not an expression of support or opposition to the actual ordinance. I think if you let this flow through and be introduced in committee after you've heard testimony, you can then decide to hold it if you wish and not allow it to advance. However, if you do decide you want it to advance, you can't have it advance if you've already held it at this point.
Right, so
Do you follow what I'm saying?
I want to
Not
make sure
really.
that I do. If we introduce this tonight, it's on general council for a full vote to move forward. It doesn't go to committee in 2 weeks. So that's what I was suggesting, is that it goes to committee and then the committee
It would be
could-
placed in committee in 2 weeks.
Okay, then let's
But it
go
would
ahead.
also be following the normal format that we do, or the process that we do. It would be on the evening meeting as well. You just wouldn't have to
Okay, so either
adopt
way,
it
it'll be
that
in
night.
committee in 2 weeks.
Correct.
And so at that point, we can make a decision. I'm okay with that.
If you introduce it, it's in committee in 2 weeks.
Okay.
If you hold it, it's not.
Okay, let's put it in committee.
Well, if we held it, it could be in committee too. I mean.
It could.
But if at the end of the committee you say you want to vote on it, you can't. So you, Mr. Buchanan.
I'd remove to introduce item 8.
You remove what?
Move again.
Remove.
The problem, I'd like to do that. I just want to check. Do we have a motion on the floor at the moment?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought he just withdrew it. I'm sorry.
Are you withdrawing your motion?
I will withdraw.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn. Mr. Buchanan, are you making a new motion?
I would move that we introduce item 8.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The second moved and seconded. It's discussion on introduction. Seeing none, all in favour?
I have discussion.
Okay.
I think that, to be honest, is a little disingenuous, given the fact that everyone here left this room thinking that it was going to be held for the committee and not introduced tonight, and then they up and leave, and the room's now empty, and now we're going to reintroduce it and change what our vote was earlier when they
I
were
thought
all
it's the
present.
same
Who were
either
those
way.
people? There was,
Wait, number 8, we're talking about,
Isn't number 8 the thing about the, yeah,
It's about plantation.
it's the plantation thing.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm sorry.
We're fine,
Barry, I thought you
everything's
were talking
fine.
about the workforce thing.
No.
no, 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 no,
No, so me pulling my no motion would be then to,
but I was,
yeah, okay.
Everything's okay, let's
All right,
vote.
We're fine.
See,
That was my,
I wondered-
my error.
that's
That was
okay.
my
I was wondering which hordes of people that you
Let's
saw left.
vote.
Yeah. It's all of those ghosts out there. Yeah. That was my error. I thought we were talking about. 8, all right.
I'd like to make a comment about his
No,
mental
let's
state,
just
but I
vote.
won't. All right, so further discussion about introduction. Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. All right, Natural Resources Committee.
In addition to the resolution about forest landowner office position that we discussed and approved, we had Mr. McFarland do a presentation about the trees at Silver Lake Park, an update, and he said that they had reduced the cut by about 10% and mentioned that.
No, 20%, or 15%. It was more than 10.
Okay, it was about, yeah, it was more than 10%. Yes, 10 or 15%. And that some of the trees that have been taken down are going to be used for salmon enhancement and other things, and that they're also planting 1,500 trees in other areas, in addition to the, I guess now 500-ish that are going to be removed from there. And we were trying to get some clarity about whether there are other projects that would be having similar impacts, and he said we might be hearing something about the Lake Whatcom Park trailhead at a point, but at least hopefully we'll be a bit more ahead of the curve on some of these things. But it was a good presentation. That's it.
All right, Finance and
In
anything from Finance.
In Finance and Administration Services Committee, we had a report from County Executive, very brief, and nothing, any other significant thing happened.
Committee of the Whole, we had an executive session related to collective bargaining. Progress is being made. Stand by for further information later. Planning and Development.
We had a conversation on being able to expand the square footage of buildings in the county when it comes to kind of the government buildings that we have there, as well as the school district buildings. That was an item that was on for introduction.
Councilmember, other items? Mr. Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back on February 24th, when we were discussing the code for the jail that was being proposed to be repealed and then revert to interdepartmental policies, remembering that we assigned that to the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force that night. We had our steering committee meeting last week, and there were a lot of questions as to really what are we asking them to do. And I went back and looked at the video, and there was no motion. It was just a composite of concerns.
Right.
One of the concerns that I have talked about with Under Sheriff Parks was the accountability for changes in their policy manuals, and we think we're getting close to working on some sort of a notification annually to the council. So that's one side of it. But Monday, we have placed it on the Monday agenda for the full task force. So what I want to do is get some clarity tonight as to really what we're expecting them to do, because they're kind of struggling. The steering committee was kind of struggling with, do you want a thumbs up or a thumbs down? this is the first item that this group has taken on as the Law and Justice Council, and it's kind of a complicated one to be first, but that's where we are. So just, let's have a quick discussion about what our expectations are.
Ms. Brenner and then Mr. Sadoo.
Yeah, could you make that a little clearer? You're talking, you want us to clarify what we're expecting the committee to do about, say, and let us know what their opinion about the jail?
We've asked them,
County jail?
we have, no, not quite. The code, remember the code that was going to be repealed?
Oh, yeah.
Which then, all those items in the code were
Okay.
going to be specified as far as in their own policy manuals within the department. And so what we came up with last, because we didn't know what to do with it, we punted it to them. Well, they don't know what to do with it, particularly. So
I have an idea.
what are we expecting? What do we want out of the task force?
Can I answer?
Mr. Sadoo's next.
Oh.
Okay, I remember very clearly why we were confused and what the public would think, because I think the replacement document given to us was not sufficient. That's what our dilemma was. They had a code, they had like 28 or 30 different points in that chapter, and all this conduct and all those things. And they said, okay, let's just delete everything and replace it with that we have a policy manual and we have our own internal process and procedures, and those will prevail, and that will be the replacement for this county code. That is the problem.
Right.
Right? So then we said, okay, how do we know? How do the public know? It's not us 7 people. It's the public to know that there is a county code about jail operations, and how does anybody know about it, right? And their comeback was they gave us a chart with links to like probably 250 different pages in their policy procedures. And the issue with that is some of their policy procedures are confidential. Some of their policy procedures are internal policies. They are not public documents as such. So when you provide a link, you cannot provide a link to a paragraph, right? You provide a link to the document. So and I think talking to Karen, Ms. Frakes, was that they need a legal help to pull things from their policy procedures and different chapters and some of the things that they think have changed in the state code to put it in a separate document and call that document as the jail code. Now, I think that what task force is going to do is the same thing, because they're not equipped to take those things out. And
that's why I'm asking.
We could have done that ourselves.
Yeah.
So even that day I was saying that they need help. Actually, Sheriff's Department doesn't have people, or maybe people and expertise to pull those things and write in a code language. They have demonstrated to me, at least it feels, they have demonstrated whatever they're deleting, it's covered somewhere. But that's not good enough. You say that, okay, whatever we are deleting is covered somewhere, but we will make the policies as we go. That's what the document says. We will make the policies as we go. So that's not acceptable. So I think I would put back to the prosecutor's office that provide some help to the Sheriff's Department to pull those paragraphs and everything into some format of a code, and then present to the council that this is the new code which replaces the other code. And then if they have some references to their policy procedures or their internal documents, we can handle that. Right now, it's not public-friendly document. It's not even council-friendly document. It's not even their employee-friendly document. That's what my take is on that.
So Ms. Brenner, then Mr. Byrd, then Mr. Donovan, and then myself.
I agree with what he's saying,
It didn't answer my question.
Concisely, I don't think it's ready for prime time with the committee. I think we need to get way more clarification through maybe the prosecutor's office or somebody about the code, and then you
Well,
got.
let me tell you, can I participate back and forth, because I think we're not going to get anywhere if we.
You are asking a question, asking for clarity, so yes.
Yeah, so there'll be a presentation made to the task force by both the sheriff's department and Counselor Liz Gallery is here. She represents the sheriff's office, so she's, going to have heard this discussion. So there'll be, both from an operational standpoint and from a legal standpoint, there'll be representation there at that meeting. But we really need to know what the council is expecting out of the task force.
Clarity.
You're not going to get it.
Oh.
Mr. Byrd and then Mr. Donovan, then myself.
I think what the sheriff's department was trying to do was to get flexibility to update policies so that they were modern and in line with current practices. And I think some of the code that we used to have made that difficult or impossible. I think ideally what we would get back from the committee is an updated kind of guideline or requirements where maybe they could bullet point some of the things that they think would be good guidelines that are more overarching but don't get into the nitty-gritty policies, so that the sheriff's department could maintain those policies and procedures that they have internally, but that they do it underneath of this overarching kind of requirement that we've set that says, here's the standards we expect to see. And that way we still maintain the standards, but they get the flexibility of updating their policies as they need. And what I think would be a good way to go about that, understanding the number of people and the skill sets that are on the committee, would be to have that discussion there of what should be in those guidelines, what should be those standards versus what's policy related.
Unless Mr. Buchanan wants to
Well,
respond.
and I was at the meeting with Mr. Buchanan when we sort of rolled this out at them, and I think even if we put it as clearly as Mr. Byrd did, and we kind of put it that way, but I think we're asking more, and I'm going to go maybe farther than Barry did here. We might be asking more from this committee than they're comfortable or capable of doing, because do we want them writing code? They don't want to be doing it. They don't want to do advising on code. They don't want to do that. So I think at one point, maybe the most we can expect from them is there's just some more eyeballs on it. We get more public awareness of what the sheriff's office has asked us to do. But they were kind of scared about the idea of giving specific recommendations about code and the political decisions we have to make about wanting to just do what the sheriff's asked in terms of getting rid of it. And that's not really answering your question, but just put it in a different frame. Like, have we asked too much of them? That was my feeling that I was getting from them. They're like, well, you punted it to us, we want to put it back to you.
Yeah, and that was the
literally
language. We'll catch the punt and punt it right back.
Exactly.
So.
But I mean, the good thing about them doing this, though, is because I think for us, we were kind of caught flat-footed by this big request from the sheriff's office to basically say, get rid of all the code and just trust us or whatever. That's kind of how it looked. And the more people, including this task force, that see that and at least know what's going on, the more then all the stakeholders are aware of what's going on. But as far as what we're asking them to do, is it just to say oh yeah, you have fun here, you have it back, or? So I don't think we've answered Mr. Buchanan's question, we have very well, and I don't think that.
I think though you hit it right on the head of what the value is. The value is that exposure in another public meeting and a lot of stakeholders at the table. So I think you have, pretty much defined what we can expect.
So my request, to answer your question, Mr. Buchanan, my hope and expectation was I wanted to give the Sheriff's Department the flexibility to be responsive to changes that cause them to change their procedure manuals quickly. but I wanted visibility to what they were doing. So to me, that was two things. One was that all the documents are visible on the county website, and two, that the county council is periodically updated, probably no less frequently than quarterly if there's been changes. So that would be my
And I think
request.
that specific concern is being talked about, so.
But that's the only thing I was really asking for myself. All right. Mr. Bird. And then I'd like to actually suggest that once Mr. Buchanan, if you feel you've got enough input from the council, that you actually write that up, and maybe we'll do it as a resolution. And I don't know what you need to proceed.
I was just going to turn to Ms. Gallery and see if, did that answer any of your questions on how to proceed Monday? I think so. Okay. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Bird.
I'm just wondering, my goal, like, I wouldn't want the committee to feel overwhelmed. In thinking back to that meeting, I thought that maybe they were the best equipped to be able to help us figure out what those standards should be. But knowing that maybe they're not comfortable with that, I have to think that we're not the only county that's got an ordinance that deals with this. Is there not some sort of like national standard or state standard or other counties that have something in line with this that lay out what those standards are that we can use as a template to start from? And from there, could we then just bring it back to your committee and work on it there until we could get it to a point that we could get it to them for their advice and feedback?
Mr. Donald.
Yeah, and one of the values inside of just the eyeballs on this thing, because like, I don't claim to know how this works in other counties or what national standards are, but just in the conversation that we had in the steering committee, we could have people and say, there are all these national standards that, in terms of use of force and health, medical treatment, all that stuff, that's becoming, we were kind of just in the 40 minutes we were talking about it there. So we'll learn more about that, but in terms of them then giving us advice about what we're supposed to do with it, I think that may be going. But these things that, like, I didn't know about some of that stuff until they started having that conversation. So I think we'll come away learning more about what those might be, what the procedures are, but it's still going to, but do we want to make an ask of them about, like, what we should do with this request to delete the code? I don't think that's something we're going to get back from them.
Mr. Sadhu and then Ms. Brown.
I wanted to ask Ms. Gallery is that document what the Sheriff's Department produced, maybe you probably helped them, where they had the old code, and then they linked that with a what do you call it, hyperlink. Is there somehow it can be pulled? Like, rather than just giving a one-pager that if you want to look it up, go click on here, and when you click, the whole document opens, and still person has to find the information. Is it possible, or you think how labor-intensive is this they have done a lot of work that if these policies are covered under this, these are covered under this, can the information be pulled and put it into a separate document and call that as a new corrections procedures? And then at least if that document is in front of the council or in front of the task force, then you are specifically looking at it and saying, well, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, or this is a national standard, or this meets those standards. So that's what I felt, that we were not able to do anything because we don't know what is in there, and I cannot click on that CD. That has so much documents on it. Me and Carol have been just joking about that CD.
Ms.
Liz Gallery with the prosecutor's office. A difficult document for people to manage, and I think that the jail, in combination with IT, and it's laborious, but if they want to pull all those policies and reflect what this jail standards can be, I think they're aware that that's what is being asked of them. And that's what part of the discussion on Monday will be. how can that be provided, where it's accessible to the public, where it's, you can call it jail standards if you'd like, but the policies in the jail that reflect what the current jail standards list in terms of medical care, housing, food, and all those basics. And so I think it's can be looked at with this committee is in its infancy, talking, what do we want to do? What are our options? Where can we go? Do we want to revise the code and update it or keep it in the policy manual? So I find the committee, the committee for Monday is a little nervous. I think their nerves will be, quashed a little bit once the open discussions happen, what the jail wants, what are our options. So, yeah, but in terms of pulling all those policies together in one place and doing links that open that, I don't see why that can't be done in a better process and occur.
Ms. Brennan, Mr. Byrd?
Well, for me, something called jail standards for lay people, just where we get the basics. I don't need to know every word of everything. I would just like to know the basics and maybe have a thing of how they've changed, but only just something fairly simple, but gives us an understanding of what's happened. I came away from that. They tried hard, but I came away from that not really understanding a whole lot about it.
Don't do it and you won't go to jail. Mr. Byrd?
I feel like that's a little bit of what they were trying to get away from, was having everything pulled back in and then having to update that master document all the time.
That's not what I want.
And so, to me, I think that a better solution would be if Councilmember Donovan kind of made me think of it a little bit differently, but if you're thinking in lines of like, hey, there's a use of force standard, and there's maybe different use of force standards out there, for us to be able to say, this is the use of force standard that we want the policies to reflect. And here's the building code standard that we want our building codes to reflect. And so instead of saying like, here's every last policy, that's for the sheriff's department to figure out and to maintain internally and have that flexibility with. But here's the standards that we expect those policies to kind of roll up to, and just being able to identify which standards and where those are at as far as what industry or what association or organization has set that standard and is maintaining that overarching standard document. We can reference that document, and then the sheriff can update his policies on a constant basis to reflect any changes in that document moving forward. That's kind of what I was thinking, is a high-arching standards document.
If I may, I actually I think if I understand what Mr. Byrd just said, I think an appropriate part for the task force to pursue is to help us to identify what are the standards we wish our corrections department to operate to. And there may be different standards. Some are obviously mandated by law, and clearly they're going to have to operate to that, but there may either be, say, I'll just invent something here. Maybe the Brennan Institute of Justice, for example, has best practices for operating correctional facilities or something like that, and we may want to, have the committee identify those best standards. So,
well, I don't think we've heard what the origin was of their policies. Some of it does come from national standards, I'm sure, and some of it comes from state standards.
And some of them just aren't either legal or they're outdated or something.
Yeah,
I remember
right.
that.
There was another bigger point, what Sheriff explained to us was that because of the condition of our jail, there are certain things they're unable to meet. So if our document says that we will perform or we will do this, and if physically they cannot do that, then they are out of compliance. I think that was the biggest issue than anything, that we are out of compliance. That's why they thought that we can solve this problem by putting a one-pager that the sheriff will make the policies as we go. So they said, then if somebody comes from public or legal or anything, that how are you running the jail? They would say, we got our internal processes and procedures, and here is a reference point, so that we can say that we are in compliance. So there is, yeah, I'll just stop there.
I think Liz can handle it.
Yes.
She's good.
Mr. Buchanan, do you have your questions answered?
Bird had
Oh,
his
sorry.
hand up.
Oh, thank you. If I were to look at that as an example and think like, hey, we're going to say we want to follow International Building Code as our standard, and all the policies have to fall under that. If the jail in its current state does not adhere to that, I don't believe that's on the sheriff, and it shouldn't be up to him to try to figure out how to solve that by changing policies. I think that comes back to us, and it's a decision for us that either we say for that specific standard, for those issues, we're willing to say, waive the standard or freeze the standard, but all other standards stay in place, or we're going to make the decision to provide funding to fix those issues so you come into standard. So it would be, I think those kind of things would come back to us essentially, but.
Well, I don't know, maybe I misunderstood what you're saying, but we can't decide to waive standards. That would probably come, I hate to bother you, Tyler, but that would probably come from the administration about what standards can be waived and all that stuff. I don't see that, we don't have enough understanding of that.
It was written into our ordinance. We wrote an ordinance that said we have to meet these standards, and the jail doors are broken, so they don't adhere to the standards.
I don't know that we can maintain, the way that jail is, I don't know what we can and can't do.
I think we might be overrunning the question now, so.
Yeah.
Let's have Ms. Gallery and Under Sheriff Parks present to the task force on Monday.
Yeah.
And we'll report back as to the progress and take it from there. Thank you all for the input, it's very valuable.
All right, other items for the council. Ms. Frazee.
I just want to talk about, we went up to Point Roberts on Thursday with Executive Laus, Mr. McFarland, and Mr. Rubin, and Councilmember Sadoo and I. And we had a lively discussion about, I think, a lot about the parks, too. Some of the parks are, they were concerned about the boardwalk, some of it being taken away, but it's beautiful now. It's really well maintained. They would like the electricity back and the windbreaks, and I think Executive Laus said today they are bringing those back for them. And there's still concerns about the boat launch being taken away, but there's no way we can do it with environmental standards. So it was a lively discussion and a lot of fun.
Can I add to that? Is one of the thing and this is has come up before is the economic development. I think the citizens were really concerned, and this is the concern we have it here as well, that that even the Business Advisory Committee is talking about housing and jobs. You know, that the problem with Point Roberts is that there is no industry or significant industry, so everybody leaves, and it's becoming, some people have come and said, we want to build it, make it like in Hong Kong, and people are so much against that. Hong Kong, what I meant is people are saying, let's bring commerce and industry here. People say, no. We want to keep the character of Point Roberts. So these are two competing things. So there has to be some way we are in the middle. But if we do not make an effort to improve the economic activity on Point Roberts, it will decline even further. So that is, some of the citizens brought it up, and I think it's a very genuine thing. And they're getting some money from China on the golf course, which I found out. But those Chinese want to come and build big apartment buildings. And people don't like that. So there it is.
Point Roberts is unique.
Yes.
Any other items? Council member updates, Mr. Buchanan, Ms. Frazee, Mr. Donovan.
Oh, jeez. Oh, thank you, you scared me.
Mr. Donovan's refrained from taking on the big issues, okay? Is that it? Ms. Brenner?
Nope.
Mr. Bird? Mr. Sadhu. I have one update. I was attending last Thursday. I was actually at the Marine Resources Committee meeting, and the last two have been quite interesting. There have been presentations from students from Western Washington University about different projects doing regarding marine resources. I felt one of the interesting ones was the analysis of changing the environment or environmental characteristics to promote oyster growth, and they were using different materials to do that, to provide artificial reefs. And the other was the issue of plastic in the ocean and recovering plastic, and one group is recovering them to make artificial limbs for kids in developing nations, melting the particular type of plastic down, running it through an extruder, putting it through a 3D printer and producing artificial limbs for about $3 a piece. So I think it was quite interesting. So with that, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.